Now, Congressman Khanna, he's a Democrat from California and a member of the House Armed Services Committee and the Oversight Committee. Good to see you, Congressman. So both President Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken have said that Russia will face severe sanctions if it were to invade Ukraine. So what do you think the U.S. should be prepared to do if indeed this happens?
I'm encouraged by Secretary of State Blinken's meeting with the Russian foreign minister. He said that cooler heads were prevailing. They're looking at possible diplomatic solutions. Here's what I think should happen. Ukraine itself should declare that they're going to be a non-aligned nation, neither on the United States nor Russia's side. They were like that up until 2008. I think if Ukraine declares that, taking a page from Jawaharlal Nehru's book, then it would de-escalate the tension and we could have peace.
Well, how can you be that non-aligned nation when you're now receiving U.S. munitions?
Well, they were non-aligned from 1992 to 2008, and at that point, there wasn't actually Russian aggression, and then we pushed to expand NATO. In my view, that push of expansion at that time was unnecessarily provocative. Now there's no doubt that Russia has invaded, and it's illegal and it's wrong. But the question is, how do we de-escalate? One of the things we can do is for Ukraine themselves to say we want to just live in peace. We don't want to be a battleground between Europe and Russia. And I hope that they will do that.
So this is what Republican Congressman Mike Waltz and a fellow member of the House Armed Services Committee said about this situation. Listen.
We have seen massive amounts of tanks, planes, and ships moving from east to west to the Ukrainian border. And it's not just the numbers, it's the types of troops. Many of them are from his reserves and National Guard, which are primarily intended for occupation duty. So I do think this invasion is imminent.
So if you have that, why is it there are those who remain hopeful about a diplomatic solution?
Well, what I would ask is what do they want the president to do? He's actually, I think, taking exactly the right steps. He sent Secretary Blinken. Blinken has made some progress in his meeting with the Russian foreign minister. The important thing is to de-escalate and convince Russia it's not in their interest to invade. The last thing the American people want is for us to be in some drawn-out war in Ukraine with Americans dying. So given that that's not an option that the American public wants, what the president has said is there will be severe sanctions, crippling economic sanctions if Russia continues. And at the same time, they're looking at a solution. And in my view, the solution is somehow Ukraine non-aligned neutrality.
President Vladimir Putin has said he wants a commitment from the U.S. to not allow Ukraine into NATO. The White House says that, that's not an option right now. But that really isn't, the U.S. isn't in the driver's seat for that anyway.
Well, look, the president of the United States is not going to be blackmailed. He can't give in to Putin's threats and Putin saying we want X, Y, and Z to not invade. If he were to do that, every country would start to try to blackmail the president. So I appreciate that the president has been tough. But the diplomats can have Ukraine themselves say, maybe it's not that great of an idea for us to join NATO because it's going to be unnecessarily provocative and our country is going to be a battleground between Europe and Russia. And I think there needs to be more thoughtful leadership from Ukraine, which has had a war-torn country for the past decade. And Secretary Blinken and others can help urge Ukraine to make that decision.
All right, let's turn now to the president's Build Back Better plan. This is what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said just this week.
What the president calls chunks, I would hope, would be a major bill going forward. It may be more limited, but it is still significant. There are big chunks of the bill that have to be contained in the bill, but call it a chunk if you want. But whatever you call it, we want it to be able to make a difference.
All right, so what do you believe here? What would it take for you to support a broken up version of this Build Back Better?
I think it's going to be a new version that is going to make a historic mark on climate, the biggest investment we've seen in climate, which will have universal preschool. Every kid in America, 3 or 4-year-old, is going to get to go to school, and that's going to expand Medicaid coverage so working families can have it. I think those are the 3 building blocks of a new plan. all will be major achievements. and we should get around that. And I actually think we could get 51 votes in the Senate for that.
What do you believe? Do you think that the president has conceded, that in order to get it passed, it just simply means removing chunks, as the House Speaker referred to it?
Well, look, what the president was trying to do would have been bigger than the New Deal. It would have been FDR, LBJ. So if we get three things that are historic on climate, on preschool, and on Medicaid expansion, as opposed to getting 8 or 9 things, yeah, obviously the president's a realist. But that shouldn't diminish from what we're doing. Every kid having preschool and having bold climate legislation is a big deal.
And you too would consider that to be a success then?
Not only would I consider it a success, I would say, how can any single Democrat vote against a piece of legislation that had bold climate provisions? I think if we can come around on that, it should pass. Let's get it to the president's desk, and then let's continue to deal with inflation, deal with the supply chain shortage, and of course with COVID.
All right. Congressman Khanna, good to see you. Stay well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.